The best part of your week is about to begin. This is the time where we talk shop, swap stories, and share lessons from our wild adventures in the creative industry. With each and every lovingly crafted episode, we strive to bottle that magic, warm, electric feeling you get after coffee with a new friend or attending a fantastic breakout session at a creative conference. You might start as strangers, but you'll leave as friends. Buckle up, settle in, and get ready for this episode of Making a Mark. Hello and welcome, gang. In the words of the late, great Mr. Rogers, it truly is a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm so excited to be back in the saddle. I've missed you guys. I know it was literally only a week, and technically we did have an episode last week where we talked about the name change. If you missed that, it's really easy to find it. And I'm joined, as always, by my amazing, cool, calm, and collected co-host, Ashley Ulmer.
Hello. Can I just say that the intro is exactly the same, except for it just changed out with making a mark. I was very surprised.
We don't talk about that. Guys, if you haven't, we don't talk about Bruno. If you can't guess from this point of the show already, mine and Ashley's main salary is not paid by making a mark. So we're definitely trying to run and gun this puppy with as much quality and effort and intentionality as we can. But sometimes that means you're swapping out little sound bites in the intro, and sometimes you've got the wrong background on the StreamYard from the old episode. Who knows, man? It's about the.
I'm super excited about the new artwork, though. I think it came out pretty cool.
Yeah, I am. I mean, you're really patting yourself on the back here, but yes, you did a fantastic job with the new cover art, Ash. I legit love it.
You took it to the next level, and you've made all these other things too. So, and you made the little ma'am icon thing.
Little ma'am guy. Yeah, I don't know how much he's going to be used, but we'll talk about that. I mean, I really do think this was an interesting one, like collabing with another. Like a lot of times you go into a creative project and you are like the recipient, like, hey, build out things from this thing that we've already decided, or you're going into like, hey, you're the quote unquote like expert in the room. Please give us the seed to go take it and run. And in this case, it was like, hey, like two people that kind of know what they're doing, like pass it like hot potato in this thing. Mm-hmm. Like you came up with like a killer thing. I came back with some notes and ideas. And then from there, I was like, okay, now what does this look like in this format, in this spot, in this spot? And it's been a little bit of an iterative deal, but I had Carson Cooper. We need to have him as a guest on the show soon. He was roasting me because he said to just envision the ideation process for this thing to be like Josh sitting at his computer going, what should we call it? Look at the Make It Pop name. Be like, Making a Mark. And then said, like the cover art for that one was me and Trace's heads on a screen. He's like, what for the cover art? Two heads. Perfect. Like,
original. There you go.
I hate you. But yeah, so we new name, same recipe. Really excited about all this stuff, and I'm excited as always about the guests and the topic today. What is our topic?
We are talking about, and I know you just told me this little 5 minutes ago, but I just want to make sure I remember it. We're talking about designing either in church life or out of church life, right? Like comparing the two. Did I say that right?
Yes. Okay. And I think some of the defining the questions what we'll be doing today. But one of our guests, Mr. Caine, has lovingly titled today's talk, "The Devil's Business." That's what we'll be doing today. Probably going to get some mail about that one. I don't know if anybody takes the time to actually send physical hate mail these days, but who knows? We're rough and tumble out here.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's go ahead and bring on our lovely guests. We've got my girl Nat Maxy, my boy Luke Tharp's office. Theoretically,
where'd it go?
The rapture happened. We all did not pass go. Did not collect $200. Guys, it is great to have you. I know we've already kind of prepped you guys on what this kind of like cage match, octagon style conversation. It really is more like coffee with friends. We're not fighting. We're not wrestling so much. But just to lay some ground rules here. So all covering the topic. If you've seen the episode before, you know that I am like Outback Steakhouse. There are no rules. I will just jump in and out between everybody. But we are going to answer the question in kind of a round robin things. We'll start with Ashley, then go to Jeff, then Nat, then Luke, and then me for my second dip at each pass that we do.
Cool.
So, Ash, let's go ahead and jump on into this puppy. What do you think? Oh, no. Wait, hold the phone. I'm botching this thing hard, guys. All right. We don't know who our guests are. We have said their names, brought them on stage.
Goodness.
Jumping the gun here. I
was just going to roll with it too. I didn't even think about that. So I appreciate you catching that.
Sometimes you are too cool, calm, and collected, Ashley. I need to be reined in a bit.
I don't even know what we're talking about today. That's how cool I'm collected I am.
That's how cool I am. I'm like, I don't know. The true rock star of the group. All right. No, yeah, please, Jeff, do you mind telling us who you are, what you do? Just introduce yourself to the townspeople. Myself being one of them.
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Jeff, or Jef Caine is the full name, and I'm an illustrator, graphic designer. I make a lot of animated GIFs. He's highlighting some of my work here on Instagram. You can follow me there. And let's see, I also do, so you're
a TikTok celebrity also.
Yeah. Because initially, one of the topics we were going to talk about was different platforms, right? So I used to just post like visual work on Instagram, but now that I'm on TikTok, I spend too much time talking about my feelings and stuff. But I used to work at a church. I used to be in-house, and now I am freelance graphic designer. So do all kinds of design, illustration stuff. Do a lot of animated GIFs or GIFs if you prefer. So yes, that is me.
I am fascinated to hear, as we jump into the topic today, some of your, like how the types of projects you get, how stuff comes in, like what it's like work, all that stuff. Because, I see from the outside looking in, we were joking about like, I feel like I know you, and we haven't actually exchanged words at all because I've watched, 40 of your Instagram videos over the past couple of years. And but yeah, I'm excited to hear kind of like how you go from like TikTok Jiffy wizard to like employed dude, because you are getting projects from it, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like and I mean maybe it's just on social media, but for me it looks like the stuff you work on is always like fun. Like it's always like quirky, fun, like bright color. Like I'm interested in like how you grow that client base and kind of where you kind of got your start with that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a little peek behind the curtain that I do boring work too. I just don't post that stuff on social media because I only post the work that like I'm excited about.
You? You fraud.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing most graphic designers can relate to that.
Same,
And of course, some of the stuff I post on social media is client work. A lot of it is just for fun work. So there's the whole mix. But yeah, I only post the stuff that I really love, which is the bright, colorful, fun stuff.
Sure. Which I think is good though, because that's
30% peace signs as well.
Yeah. Big advocate of squatting and making the peace sign. That's my brand.
You also this past summer you also did like a crazy bike tour, right? Like up the coast of California.
I did, yeah. I rode down the west coast of America. So started in Vancouver, Canada, and rode down Washington, Oregon, California, ended in Tijuana, Mexico.
Oh my God.
On my bike. Yeah. And my wife was driving along and she had like camping gear and stuff. So we would camp in tents along the way.
That's still so hardcore. Cool. Don't try and like walk it back. Like that's still very hardcore.
I say that because a lot of people do this trip without a support vehicle. A lot of people literally carry their own camping gear and everything. So I had a slightly easier time, but yes, I still pedaled the whole way, which was super exhausting, but also super fun. Yeah,
that's awesome.
It seems super exhausting just to like Google Maps Street View your way that distance, much less actually ride a bicycle there. But man, that's awesome. Can't wait to learn some more about kind of peeking behind the curtain there.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
No, we're on to Nat next. Where you at?
I have 2 accounts. Choose. I don't know. Hey, I'm Nat Maxy, and I'm originally from Honduras, but I've been in Georgia for like half my life. So
wait, You're in Georgia with me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
That's why we both are getting all the political ads, like
That's
getting
right.
the text, getting the ads, like my kid, my elementary kid is like tired of the ads. He's like, he knows both faces. He's mad at both of them. And so he's getting perfect propaganda. But
my son is like, is that the guy that pointed the gun at his wife?
Yeah, that's what he does. He's like,
America.
what about this one? Yeah, he brings all the specific things about him.
Perfect.
So yeah,
Perfect.
I'm an hour probably from you. I'm west
Okay.
Georgia.
Yo, we collabed on this like forever ago. Small world.
Yeah.
See,
when y'all were talking about the logo, like what about the podcast logo, I was thinking, I did some collabs a long time ago. I would love to do that again because I forgot how fun that was. Because I did one with you, I did one with JJ, and that was just fun. I used to post a lot more last year, so
that's awesome.
But yeah, I'm a designer and I'm an author. I work mostly with churches and nonprofit orgs. And I used to be in IT. I was almost 10 years in web development and app management. I have my degree in computer science, but made the switch the last few years into design world. And I write as well with Broken Crayons. It's an organization for women. And I talk a lot about mental health and anxiety, and also use my art to, navigate all of that and express my experience and connect with others. And yeah.
That is cool. It's reason 8,000 that I love these moments is because, like, I don't know, just unpacking people's story. Like, how did you make it a big jump from IT? Like, you know what? I hate all of this. I want to draw pictures, and you did it. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you walk away from that chunk of life with any level of like bitterness? Like, I hate it. Like, kind of broken kind of deal. You're like, man, I was in the wrong seat for 10 years and now I'm in the right seat, or was it just kind of like a transition? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it was a mixture of both, but also, so I was in IT forever. I thought I would be in IT forever. Like I changed with like ranges. I started programming, eventually moved to like front end development. Then it got to management, where I got introduced to like marketing and HR and other, like creative areas that I was originally more into just the back end kind of things. And then I had 2 kids, which is the key component to my shift of careers. And I thought I was always going to be working full time in corporate. Like I thought it was like my little lane. I had my ideas, my goals. And then I had kids, and they just disrupted my whole life.
They be shaking things up sometimes.
They did. They really shook me and said, "You really are going to do this?" But God really used that. I know that faith is obviously one of my key things, and I really felt like God used that moment to like check my heart. And also, I went through a lot of burnout in corporate.
Heard
which
that.
is there's a lot of like boundaries and overworking myself and everything else within there. And so like I just took like 2 years at home with my kids. I was able to come home and then kind of like rearrange of like, okay, what do I want to do? Like, what do I enjoy? And then I just started designing at home for myself, started posting for myself with zero expectations of like, oh, I'm going to go get clients. It was just like, I need to find myself, find my inner, my inner healing and mental health stuff, this whole journey. And eventually I connected with you guys through like, I didn't know there was a like a community, a creative community. And then I slowly started getting clients, and that's how I started the transition. It was very unplanned and organic. So
I love that. That's so cool.
So yeah, again, I don't know if anybody assumes there's more thought and strategy going into these episodes or not, but I did not realize some of those things about your kind of story here. So yeah, you've got a great perspective as well to speak into church work versus regular work, or other dirty dealings. Luke, my guy, tell me a thing about you. Tell me something I've never heard about you.
So much like Nat, I was also in IT. I worked for I worked for a company that builds warships out of Pascagoula, Mississippi.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, So I did that, and then moved into ministry actually from there, and then now I work full time for my local church here, and I do social management for some artists, and then I do content creation and marketing for mainly Christian artists, but I also do a lot of stuff for churches and then some secular artists as well. But a lot in the music industry. I do a ton of cover art and tour art, things like that. But what you don't know about me is probably that fun little tidbit that I worked on a naval yard.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Were you in the Navy? Is that how you got connected?
I was not. I definitely was not. No.
Sure.
You're just a battleship enthusiast.
I was just 100 yards from them, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just did IT work, mainly like dispatching people to fix people's computers and all of that fun stuff. But today, if I run off camera, it's because I'm here with my daughter and she likes to throw things around and need help. So if you see me depart, I will be back. But that's just what's up.
I feel you, dog. I feel you. Well, cool, guys. Thank you all for making the time to do this today.
Thank you.
Ashley, you're up first. Let's talk about this puppy. The difference between your work for churches versus working for everyone else.
Sure. For me, and I mean, I've talked about this a little bit in the past. Like, I've never been on staff at a church. I think I actually said this on the last episode or 2 episodes ago. The only 2 jobs, like as far as creative, that I've ever applied for that I did not get was for churches, which is funny. Like, I don't know. I guess I just wasn't cut out for it or whatever. But I don't know the difference now, because I do obviously do work for some churches, not so much as much churches anymore, but more so clients that are like authors that are Christians or, you know, Catholic or anything like that. I don't know. I guess the difference is the, I don't know, like the intention of the design, like the meaning of the design, I guess, is different. As far as like my interaction with the client, it's like the exact same. Like there's no difference. Like I obviously, you know, talk to them the same and everything. But yeah, I don't know. Is that kind of like what we're like going for? Like what the difference is as far as like client interaction?
Yeah, if that's how you want to take the question.
That's how I'm going for it.
I love it. I love it.
What about you, Jef?
Well, so I proposed this topic because Josh and Ash, I knew both of you guys because we were all kind of like Christian graphic designer, content creators back in the day. And this has been, I guess, relatively recent, like personal development with me. I've been exploring my faith right now. Like I used to be a Christian and work in churches and no longer believe, or no longer I'm sure that I believe anyway.
Sure.
And I felt kind of a crisis of conscience about that, of like, am I like actually doing a good thing here by creating content for churches? So that was part of the reason for my departure. And of course, like I've struggled with all this. I remember I made a post about this, and Josh, you commented like, sad to see you go, something like that. And then I commented,
the best comeback ever.
once a church graphic designer, always a church graphic designer, I think, or something like that is what I said.
Yeah, that was it. Always a part of the fold.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, for as much as I'm personally kind of like in the wilderness right now in terms of what I believe, I still feel like that kinship. Of course, like many of my friends in real life are people that I still know from my past church job and stuff like that. And I still do like some projects for churches, honestly, but no longer on staff anyway. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question. I just did some preamble for it.
No, that's great. And I can relate to, we're in some ways we're like ships passing in the night, because I kind of came from the opposite direction. I was working in advertising and then realized, like, I think one of the times it really hit home for me is when I was working on ads for personal injury attorneys. And I was like, I'm really perpetuating something I don't believe in here. Like I need to get some other things in place. Like that wasn't like the wake up call or like the big impetus, but it's tough to pour your soul into something. You're like, man, I disagree with this. I can't get behind it. Which is an interesting thing about, I mean, I guess that's true for every job. We romanticize design and creative work. We're like, I can't do it if I don't believe in the cause. But like, I think I'm sure other people have similar qualms. Like, hey, I'm cooking the books for the mafia. My morals and my job title don't really like line up here. I think everybody has that level of conflict at some point. But
that was
I guess
massive jump you just took.
It is
designing for attorneys and cooking the books for the mafia.
I go
or
hard in
is
the paint.
it? Or is it?
Somebody has been speaking Better Call Saul lately, and it's showing.
That's funny.
No, I mean, there's a difference in attorneys and personal injury lawyers, and the words that I have heard them like come out of their mouth in meetings behind closed doors are like truly abysmal and soulless. Usually about their clients and just like the 0% of respect they have for them and what they're whatever. That's a whole separate thing. Hey, we talked about the devil's business today. We did. No, yeah, that I hear you though there. Nat, what about you? Maybe that's the thing is how would you define this question? Like what angle jumps out at you about it?
So like to me, I haven't worked in like when I worked in a non-church or non-faith related areas, it was not design work, but I did work with other designers. And so I have more of a experience of like working with people because I've been freelancer, so I've never worked as part of the staff in a church. My husband is a pastor though. So like he's had to deal with multiple hats. Like he's done design work, even though his degree is not design work. So like I've seen a lot of the church world behind the scenes. So like my perspective is more of that kind of thing. I've seen like people who have no design skills have to come up with stuff in a church because there's no budget to hire someone. So like to me, that's where when you said the question that I thought about that kind of thing of like, oh, like in church world is kind of like a small business where you don't have the resources or the time to do the proper, like let's hire a designer, let's do branding, let's do all the little guidelines that have a brand guide. It's more like,
baby.
Yeah, you just are winging it, and like whether before maybe it was like using Word or like kind of like older, just hey, let's just throw stuff in a document. Now you have Canva, and so it's more disjointed of like you have several people within a church just throwing stuff out there. Like we got to communicate. It doesn't matter if it looks good or if like there's a branding style. And whether in my corporate experience, it was very specific. Like we have to pass stuff through legal and like HR. Like there were a lot of steps. And it was more boring work, design work, because you had to stick with
so much red tape.
It was a lot of red tape, and obviously the branding. Like I work for a wire company, so like it's not an exciting kind of marketing. Like everything had to be a particular way. So there's pros and cons to both. As long as it's a healthy church or a healthy business, and like there's not toxic relationships, and like you're not, getting abused in some sort of like relationships. I think there's pros and cons to both. So I've seen both worlds, and to me, I'm enjoying working as a freelance because I figure out that like after working years in like business, I got bored really quickly without knowing. Like I just was kind of like doing the routine and doing things, and like I enjoy having multiple projects and multiple things and multiple intentions. And but I did relate when you said that, Josh, about like working, like selling your soul for the design. Like I struggled really hard when I started designing of like, I got a few questions from different potential clients with things that I did not per se like align value wise. And I struggled because I was like, I don't know if I can do design work because if I align myself with it, I'm all in. Like I'm very passionate. I love learning who my client is and like doing stuff together. And so like, I have a hard time with like, okay, I don't really align with that, but I need the job. Like
word.
Yeah. So I definitely related to that kind of thing when you mentioned it.
Yeah, that I've really loved what you said too about, it matters a lot less what you're doing in terms of like, is it a good job or not? And like what stacks up and what really matters is like, is it healthy there? Is the culture right? Are you appreciated? Are the processes like do you have a good boss, manager person? Like that matters so much more than a lot of the other pieces. Like you can go work at a quote unquote like boring place and have really good culture, and that stuff is amazing. And on the flip side of that, you could work for some of these people that everybody like wishes they had those jobs, and you're like, this is toxic and horrible. I'm working 80 hours a week and like I have no family life. And
for sure.
Yeah. And I had to learn that because again, like my goals in growing up and everything that I had, younger was like, I just want to be in corporate. I want to rise the ladder. Like I had different priorities. And so like now I value more my flexibility, like can I have fun with it? And like, I may not be in the same, climbing the ladder. And like, when you talk about finances and that same that I had in a corporate world, now I have other priorities and I value other things.
Ladder looks real different freelancing.
Yes.
Wait, Is everybody here full-time freelance, or did I miss that?
Yes.
Luke, you're on staff. Luke's on staff. Luke's still got a day job keeping us all anchored. Okay, good. Whew, that was a close one. That was a close one.
Can we have your health insurance, Luke?
Holy smokes. That's the talk I want to have, is health insurance. Actually, I don't want to have that talk. I just want to keep burying that conversation until I absolutely have to have it. But I can continue doing. Luke, how about you, dog? What's your hot take on this just out of the gate?
So I do work for church. I think the difference in church work and non-church work is just a different level of ownership. Maybe for me, especially because it is my church and I have a very high standard for it. And I think I've told you this before, but you could say the word excellence and you hear it in lowercase. I see it in all caps. It's the same word, but they read very differently. And for my church, I have a standard that I keep, but for clients, I have to meet their standard. And their standard may be a different definition of excellence. And I just have to be okay with that. Yeah. But the ownership level, I think, is just different. But then again, my church clients and my secular clients, the difference is secular clients are flat out easier to work with. Because, really? Yeah, because churches, they have that level of ownership. Secular clients are like, here's the paycheck, here's the deadline. We hired you for a reason, you know. Whereas church clients is, I love them to death, and I will grind it out as long as they want me to. They're usually the kind that's like, hey, we're trusting you with our brand, we're trusting you with whatever. Can you join this Slack channel? Can you join this whatever? Where I'm working with national multi-country clients right now that are saying, like, you know, here's one email with what we need. Let us know when you're done. We'll send the check. So both are fun. Of you listening, both are challenging, but they're different. They're very different.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So for those of you listening to the podcast, as Luke is saying that, everybody's heads are emphatically nodding. And I want to unpack that more as we kind of go around next pass here. But really quickly, can we go through and say, like, what are your no, we'll save that. That's interesting though. And I think that your like note on like ownership versus is this just a job, like that definitely plays a dynamic there too.
Yeah.
My answer to
I definitely, like, I walked in from a week of vacation yesterday and I saw something on the screens that had been changed, just a minor tweak, but I was like, okay, I'm going to go fix that.
You like Steve Jobs did?
Yeah. I was like, right away, I'm going to go take care of this. Well, I was in church, so I was Jesus flipping tables that time. But usually other clients, they'll take my work and then they'll change it. I don't really care. That's another little fun dynamic. I've definitely seen some of my stuff go out the door where I'm like, oh, you can remove the tag on that. You don't have to put my name on it.
Yeah. So I think a good parallel to that for us freelancers would be like your own personal brand. So like I am more protective and intentional because like the buck stops here kind of thing with like a bright coal thing that is happening. Whereas if a client says like, hey, we hate this, change it. I'm like, I mean, it's your job, right? Like might disagree. I might like wave the flag and like say why I did something, but like you're the boss kind of thing. And I think that's similar to what you're talking about, depending on what seat you're in, whether it's church, business, agency, whatever. If you have ownership and are like trying to think long-term about building a brand, it is a different kind of set of priorities there.
Yeah.
One of the biggest differences that I know from church, because I've been on staff at a church, it was one of my first jobs. I was like cutting grass and playing music and teaching music and going to college and graphic design. Like it was a mess, baby. But one of the biggest differences that I knew from churches that size back then and agencies back then is agencies have like a game plan and a process, and there is a way of doing things and a set of standards and expectations that I walk to pretty much every table expecting, but I realized after working with enough churches, like, oh, that's not the norm. And in a lot of cases, like ministries are reinventing the wheel because nobody in the conversation has like ever been in anything else. Like they're kind of like organically growing a process or winging it every week, just because they don't know any different. And that's not a slight on it. It's just, that's one of the biggest differences in my mind is organizations that do or don't have a process or have experience outside of that organization's way of doing something.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into kind of the thing that everybody got hyped about a second ago. Non-church clients being easier and what the rationale is there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I agree. I think the way Luke put it is, with ministry, definitely there is more of an ownership there. Like they, I don't know, like at least for me, like I said, I've never been on staff, but working like with ministries or churches, it's more so they bring you on as like, hey, you're a part of the team, like for this, project or whatever. So there's difference there. But I will say, like throughout the years, like owning our screen printing business back in the day, and well, I'll even take it way back, even when we used to book shows, right? We would work with secular bands all the time, but we would also work with Christian bands. 100% the most terrible people I've ever met in my life were Christian bands. 100%.
Oh.
Not all of them. Not all of them. There are some.
It hurts.
Great. But I'm just saying, it was more so, I don't know, it was almost like they had like this like pompous attitude, like that they were like more righteous than like us as promoters or even like our team and stuff. So there was like, there's a few artists, but again, most of them were great, but just there was some. But also in screen printing, like we worked with churches and a lot of other organizations, businesses. The most picky clients were definitely churches. Like overall, they were always very nitpicky about products and stuff. But as far as now, like freelancing design wise, like I don't know, I think it's kind of equal for me. Like there's like my clients are so great. Like they're always like really chill for the most part. And there's a little, sometimes there'll be people who are a little more nitpicky, but it's on both sides. It's not necessarily like I haven't experienced one or the other now, but I will say in the past, definitely churches were a lot harder to work with for sure.
Man. And we wonder why people are upset with the church. Like when we like act like that in all of these other contexts, especially for people like you go to like maybe not actually like a secular, and that's always been an odd word to me. You go to a secular screen printer as a church band or whatever in 2008, and then you just act like an absolute poop. And they're like, this has been my first and only experience with a Christian or a church, and that was horrible. Wow. Yeah. No, thank you. Like, good job, guys. Good freaking job.
For sure.
Yeah, this is interesting. Super interesting. And because I have a very different experience, but I think some of it though is the sauce. Like Ashley, you're talking about like your clients now are like they kind of flow with you a little bit better. And part of that is you've been building a brand and establishing like, this is me, this is how I operate, this is the kind of things to expect, this is my work. And so people come to that and expecting that, wanting that. So that no matter what your situation is or what you're offering people, that's always going to result in a lot more like smoother relationships and transactions. But, you can't start day one with that. And if you're plugged into an organization, you don't get to call all those shots. Like you got a job, you got a hat to wear, do the thing.
Yeah.
But that is kind of an interesting component of some of our stories is like people are hiring us for our style or our personality or our process or some amalgamation of the three.
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Yeah. So many thoughts. I feel like it could be kind of a cultural thing with just the mindset, right? Like you were talking about church being more like a family. So I feel like within a church context, there's a little bit more of an openness to like bring your thoughts and feelings to creative projects versus secular clients. Oftentimes, they treat it more like a business, like they treat you as a professional if they're hiring you. And I mean, also like leadership, right? Just like, obviously like every church is different. Every client is different. I should say this. I've had plenty of high drama, like secular clients as well. So, we're speaking in generalities here.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a very common part of a church business model is that like, if it's like a mega church that has a creative team, maybe there's people who like went to business school for the creative arts department, but still like the main honcho on top is probably going to be the senior pastor, who's the person who like went to seminary and has public speaking skills and is very charismatic, but is not like necessarily a creative design thinker, not necessarily like a business person, but they take on the role just by default of like CEO, business person, which, you know, and which they may not be necessarily skilled at.
Yeah.
What you got, Nat? Great points, Jef.
I'm kind of like Ash on the freelance part. I haven't had much different interaction when it comes to the actual clients, because I've only been freelancing for the last few years, a couple of years. And so like I've had really great churches work with me. And it is kind of like, I do agree on like the whole, like you come with more of a family, like it's more connected than like, here's your job, and like transactional, I think might be more secular or whatever. But I've had really good churches and really good organizations. And even though it's been a closer relationship, it has been healthy as far as I've been involved. So I don't have much to say whether, you know, either way. I haven't had many non-Christian or non-faith related clients.
Oh, gotcha. So you, like, you got your IT experience.
Yeah. And there was drama there too, you know, like not with me personally. Like I don't like drama. Like as a person, I kind of stay away from really dramatic people. So like I didn't have any like really hard things relationship wise there. And I did go to, maybe that's what my experience is probably very similar on both ends, very much like family. Like the company that I work with was a family business for many years. And it was, when I first was hired, it was very much like everybody's a family kind of thing. And so maybe that's why I don't see much of a difference, because it's been that way from my both sides of
those
working.
Words send me scared running every time.
Now I'm like, ooh, red flag. But you know,
back then you're like, oh, perfect. But
then it was great, especially
easy.
Yeah, that was my first job from college. I worked in the same company for 10 years, and I was coming from Honduras, when it's a Latin culture is very much like everybody's a group and a family. So like it was like a natural progression. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would.
Yeah, but your family sucks. I don't want to be a part of yours.
Right. Yeah.
My family's great. We got each other's backs. Your family's just slack.
Yeah. And so like now I'm like, well, let's do boundaries, you know, because I think there were, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And it might be in both ways. And also like I mentioned, my husband's a pastor. So I've seen several churches, and like, I think that part of it is probably when it comes, there's a lot of like, there's not a lot of boundaries, because it's the culture, like you're more of a family, or like, you know what I mean? Or like you need to rely on more volunteers because we don't have the budget to hire a designer who went to college. So maybe I've just seen problematic on both sides. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I think, I don't remember who said it, but I mean, it's all a mixed bag. Like, you know, there's going to be fantastic church clients and fantastic business clients and nonprofits, and there's going to be terrible versions of those as well. And especially like depending on your sample size, like, or, you know, experience in working in those, like you might have a lot more of one or the other, got really burned by one, or, you know, it's an isolated experience that's a big, you know, right in your face or whatever, but that makes sense. I was laughing too, because when you talked about like, oh, I got boundaries now, just imagine like, oh, we've released the new Nat Maxy action figure now with boundaries. Like I love
I've been
new feature for 2023.
It took me too long, but here we are, you know, like, oh, that's a thing. You need it, you know. But here we are. But no, like I mentioned, all my clients thankfully have been really good interactions. So That's
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's cool.
How about you, Luke? Overall, better relationship with churches,
I've had
or
a pretty good experience. But I think part of it for all of us is kind of on us to do some due diligence going forward, because like Nat has talked about, and I hate to be the millennial using the word boundaries too, but like just as I'm getting older, I'm learning the kind of creative that I am and the things that I need in jobs. And it's on us to communicate those things. And so a lot of churches are still playing catch up. Like they're catching up to, they've always done things the way that they were and it was working. And now all of a sudden they're moving to this new, everything's creative, everything's online. And I think over the past 2 years through COVID, which was terrible, obviously it was a great thing for the creative community because it let the world at large see how much they need creatives. And the church's doors stayed open by and large because of creatives. Like we were carrying it online, we were carrying it with social and sending out invitations to like online meetups and all this kind of stuff. And so through those 2 years, which is when I was really kind of growing in creative, my clients started treating me a lot better because of the necessity of them needing me and needing guys like you. And so over that time, they all kind of gained a new respect. So I think the past year and a half for me have been pretty breezy because clients respect us a lot more and they're willing to abide by those boundaries. And I think that is due mainly because they realize now how much they needed us. And so
put some respect on it.
Yeah. And so because of that, I now have like the boundaries or whatever that I set for myself with my clients. And if they don't meet that criteria, there's tons of other people that are probably suited for that job. So I'll take some of the ownership for a bad interaction because I didn't set those boundaries up front. But
I got you.
But yeah, by and large, it's been really, really good. But I'm gonna step off for 1 second to take care of a little girl in the next room, get her some snack, and then I'll be right back.
Yo, a snack in a movie fixes many problems. How about it?
So can I say something I've been thinking about with all this conversation is I wonder if some of like the nitpickiness that you experience with working for churches comes from a place of insecurity. Ash, when you were talking about like Christian bands being more high drama than secular bands, it made me think of, I used to feel that way about myself. Like, I mean, I still to this day have intense imposter syndrome all the time. But when I was working at a church, I always felt like, am I a decent graphic designer or am I just good enough for a church, right? Because there's this idea of like Christian rock is like the watered down version of real rock and roll. And I want to say full respect to all of you. I feel like you guys do legitimately good work. You guys are not just like good for church work.
You're not good for church. You're just decent.
Yeah. I do feel like that's I mean, of course, every church is different and has different like levels of how much they prioritize creativity. But I do feel like churches have caught up and have like kind of developed and come into their own more in recent years and are less kind of like chasing the trends or like doing parodies of real world TV shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I
know exactly what you're talking about.
Which I feel like is a healthy place for the church to be. But anyway, I wonder have you guys ever felt that level of insecurity when like working for a church or doing, Christian content?
Sure.
That is super interesting note. And yeah, I mean, I love that you brought that up. Go ahead, Ash.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I think I feel that insecurity, like in general, just like always thinking like, oh, I don't know if what I'm creating is as good as, as it could be or whatever. But yeah, but back to your point about the Christian bands back in the day. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a good point. Like you said, like maybe there was an insecurity there. It was, like I said, 90% of them were awesome. They were like super good people. But it was just the ones that were terrible were Christian bands. And it was at the time they were like, I don't know, just almost super pompous, like as far as like, because it wasn't like merch we were working with them. It was, we were booking shows for them and they were, I don't know, they were just very pompous.
I know what it is. I have a strong theory here. Especially in that situation, it is the size of your pond. And in church world, you've taken a huge chunk of the market, and church, unlike every other industry, like say you're like into coffee or like, hey, I design for musicians or whatever, you have no problem cross-pollinating and talking to other people. But in church world, it's kind of taboo to have Jef Caine on the call here. You're not supposed to be friends with people who don't like toe the party line, right? And so like there it is a pretty natural thing for somebody who grows up as a church designer or as a like band or like a worship band leader. You're like, everybody you're looking at, especially back when you're talking about Ashley, everybody you're looking at, you're comparing yourself to all the other church designers or all the other people in a smaller pool. And so then if you actually do find any level of success or talent or have 8 people tell you good job, you then like just head swells, especially if your heart's in the wrong place, right? And so I think that a lot of what we're talking about, whether it is we don't have good processes, we don't know how much to pay people, we have bad ideas that we feel strongly about, we're running this thing like a family business, we are just absolute pains to work with. Those are all things that come from you not poking your head up above sea level and like seeing how other people do it, realizing how small you are in the context of the rest of the world. Because I've joked plenty of times, I would say, like I approached the church world on purpose. I said, in the entire like spectrum of logo designers, I'm probably like a middle of the pack, baby. I'm a strong C+, right? But then you take me over into church space, whew, I look like a gym, right? Just because like it's like I don't
Big
know
fish
that
in a
many.
small pond kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Like I jumped over in the small pond. It's like, hey, now I get to feel huge. But like, I keep myself balanced, or try to, by talking to, like, always chasing people that are running way faster, right? And staying hungry and curious and like trying to do that. But if you're not aware that there are ponds bigger than yours, then it really changes your perspective on every single part of this conversation that we're having. And that's the show today, guys. Thank you for, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, I had to mute because my dog was barking.
No, you're good. You're good. Do you guys agree? Whoa, Colin Smith in the chat is with LaCroix Church of Cape. Yo, LaCroix Church. I need to know more about this, Colin. Was this named before or after the rising epidemic of, or the rising success of bubble water? Bubbles, as my children call them. We're big off-brand LaCroix drinkers in the Whiting household here. No, yeah. Do you guys think that my hypothesis is correct or founded, or like I think everybody also deals with imposter syndrome. I don't want to underscore or undermine that. I think we all deal with that, but I think imposter syndrome is a super different thing from just blindness and unawareness of, where you exist on the spectrum of talent and processes and stuff.
For sure. No, I agree. I think for me, like when you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like even for me as a designer, like jumping into like I think it was more so like the Instagram community of like, pro church, creative church, this like whole community we have online, like Christian creatives. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I think definitely when I jumped into that, it like you said, I made me feel like, oh yeah, okay. Like I feel like I can kind of stand up and be like, I'm good at this. Whereas if I feel like I put my work next to, I don't know, like, so like, for instance, like I always draw inspiration from like tattoo art, right? Like I love, like, I just think it's amazing what they do. Like if I was to like, so I watched, for instance, I watched the show Ink Master. It's my favorite show of all time.
Duh. It's so good.
It's so good. But I watch these artists and I'm like, if I was to stand next to them and try to even like compete in any way, I would look like such an idiot. Like I have no talent as far as that goes. Like I can illustrate, but not like that. You know what I mean? So like, again, like it depends on the spectrum you're like in. So yeah, I don't know. I guess there is a little bit of that as far as the.
To piggyback off of that, I think that there's to be healthy, you got to hold two things. And so often people hold one. You got to hold like, I know where I am in the food chain, but also the food chain doesn't matter a lot. Mm-hmm. Like you need to know and be chasing and like going, but like, we were talking about like, I think it was even before we started recording, like, I don't know what day I'm going to feel like a real designer, but I don't know if I'm there yet. And like, there's no finish line, right? Everybody just keep running that way. Like keep chasing, keep going inward, onward, upward, however the phrase goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think that the small business thing, I'm realizing I forgot to have my controversial hot take in during my segment, so I'm gonna roll it back real quick here. I have overall had better experiences with churches than I have with businesses, and my theory on that, and I've also my like lowest points, and I've never been screamed at by a church, right? I've had some like business agency clients like say horrendous things to me in a room before and like yell and pitch a fit, right? That's never happened in church context. I've had people say, like, hey, we're not happy. And I'm like, cool, like, let's fix it and like figure it out. But like the amount and the volume and volatility of my church relationships are not the same as what I've experienced in business world. And I think part of that is business world was younger Josh. And I'm also in a market, like we're a fairly medium-sized city, like we're pretty hefty, but it is also in a bubble. And so a lot of the businesses that I work with that are local are mom and pop, small, good old boy system type of things, which is like,
I think you froze.
Is Josh frozen for the rest of you?
Dadgummit.
Okay, you froze.
You're back.
I was on a freaking roll, man.
It's the secular media trying to shut you down, man.
Dang. Freaking Elon Musk, get out of here. No way, he's trying to, I don't know who's on what side anymore. I've stopped listening to everyone. So I was basically just saying, like, Augusta is kind of like a small town bubble too. So a lot of that like small family run business thing, flying your agency by the seat of your pants. Everything is chaos, and that is just the normal way of business. Like, that is my experience working in business. I said, whew, that's crazy. Let me have some really intentional processes, come in and start day one of this type of work with 10 years of experience, and like really intentional, and like give the pathway for clients to win on a process. And so like that has largely shaped probably why I'm having a different thought or reaction to other people who might have had a kind of a flipped version of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was going to say, I'm noticing in the comments, Dustin was talking about where he's from and like how, I mean, like you just touched on it a little bit too, like where you're from, how that kind of determines the type of work you're getting, but also like the client's experience. So I don't know. I don't know if we want to kind of touch on that too. I thought that was kind of interesting how he's saying in West Virginia, secular or
Virginia,
businesses don't
Mountain
pay well.
Mama. I fully expect if I came to visit you in West Virginia and I like walked into a gas station and sang a line of that song, like I want the whole gas station to like jump in with me and like chorus together. Cause I gotta believe it's like Alabama, like Sweet Home Alabama, like everybody jump in there.
They've embraced
that's
it.
one
They're
of
not
my
sick of it.
favorite songs.
If you
One of
did
my
that
favorite
here
songs.
in Albuquerque, you'd probably get shot.
If I sang West
If you sing,
Virginia,
no, if you just came in singing in a gas station, you'd probably get shot. People would be like, no, not dealing with
no, not having it. Well, okay. The dream lives on elsewhere.
No, but I will say, like, I was going to say this because it made me think of that because they're saying where they're from. I have a client of mine who is just a corporate business. There are like Christians who are on the team, but it's the actual business itself is not. And they're honestly like one of my best clients I've ever had. Like just because they're super hands off and just very easy, and they love everything I do and stuff. But he was giving me advice when I first started working with him because we were talking about like how much I was going to charge and all this stuff. And he was saying, he's like, you have to think when you're as a freelancer, when you're charging a client, think of where they're from, like in the nation, right? So he said, if they're on the West Coast, if they're in California, charge them more. If they're in New York, charge them more. If they're middle, like, Midwest, maybe a little bit less, Southwest, a little bit less, like depending on where they live, charge accordingly, which I was like, that's weird, but it makes sense though, because like thinking of someone in California, they have loads and loads of options as far as creatives they could work with. And more than likely they're going to find someone who's one better than me, but also they're more so concerned about quality because they have so much quantity versus they don't want the cheap thing. They want the best thing.
I was taking that a different direction. I was thinking you're saying like cost of living, like you match your rates to wherever the cost of living is. But you're saying like, hey, like bigger markets, you got to be more competitive potentially.
No, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying you charge more for those bigger markets. Like as far as people in California, charge them more than I would charge somebody here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You know what I mean? Because of just the income that they have. And more likely they're used to higher rates and they would equate your higher rate as better quality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one, of course, the size of the organization is going to make a huge difference as well. But yeah.
Yeah.
Josh Louder in the chat's talking about how like organization size definitely affects the experience. Do you want to riff on that for a second? Nat, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because we talked about like processes and having, things set up. The bigger the organization, the more you have that set up, most likely. Then when you have a smaller business or a smaller church, I think it's more of a personal. I think it becomes more personal versus transactional kind of relationship. That's what I've at least encountered.
Can I ask a question to the rest of you guys? Just moment of solidarity, because like something I've thought about a lot, or I thought about a lot when I was working for churches, was kind of like the ethics of being a big corporation. Of course, I don't know if you guys are tired of hearing this criticism of like, why do churches have huge production budgets? Why don't they give the money to the poor? Stuff like that. I was always, because sometimes I had that feeling of like, oh yeah, am I like on the bad guy's side right now? That, and then also I've been in so many creative conferences where people say like, we have the best news ever. We don't need a marketing department. We don't need a logo. And it's like, okay, but we also we have a logo. So this is a safe space, right? Do you guys ever feel that?
Safe. Yeah, this is great.
That inner turmoil, crisis of conscience with your work?
Yeah, I'll go first to kind of set the mood here. So whether I'm running a business or thinking about like in the context of church, I feel like you need to be responsible with and try and do the most with the least. Like I'm a big fan of not wasting stuff. And I think that I always pull up like the Jack White quote of, if I know I've got 15 feet of stage I need to cover, I bring an 11-foot cord. Because like sometimes the magic happens when you've got those constraints. You're like, I don't know. Like, this thing costs $3,000. What can we do for $800? Like, I don't know. Star Wars was made by a bunch of like college students and like duct tape, and so I think that we immediately jump into expensive, nice, shiny. In a way, like again, regardless of like what the context is, church or not church. And I think that that's leaving some great opportunities. Here's to your invite. Just keep the stash going. I love it. Sorry, I got distracted by Dustin's stash comment there.
I don't know. You can't compete with Jeff's stash, though. I'm sorry.
No, there is no competition there. Jeff's stash is rolling, baby.
I'm pro.
Rolling.
You look good.
Appreciate it, homie. I've been instructed to shave it before our Christmas photos this weekend. So, R.I.P. stash. I might have a repeat appearance and have it back in time for Christmas. Who knows? But so that's kind of one of Josh's MOs is like, hey, charge a fair price, work hard, do good work, make money, like all that stuff. But also, like, again, if you're coming from like a believer, like faith background, like God is an extravagant God. Like he does go above and beyond, and he like is lavish in some ways. And does that mean we need a flying drum set and our soundboard should cost $200,000? Like, is that the God's expression of lavishness? I don't know. Like I would personally really have a lot of like pause before I pulled the trigger on something like that. Granted, I don't wear that hat. I'm not a pastor. I'm not in charge of a tech team at a, multi-million-dollar church campus. Like, I don't know, like that might be a legitimate need. I don't know. It definitely is a terrible optic, but that's kind of my take on it is I don't think it's as easy as like every dime that comes into a church should go to an orphan somewhere. But I also do feel squirmy and weird inside when I hear how much like a floor to ceiling LED wall costs. And like, I want to see like a percentage breakdown of like, okay, how much are we putting towards our local community and like helping people impoverished abroad? And like, after you hit a certain threshold, then you're allowed to spend that on yourself. I don't know. Like, is that a weird moral justification? I don't know. Yeah. That's kind of my gut read on that one.
I was going to say a story like our local church at the time, this is probably about 10 years ago. And the church itself, like where it's located is in like a low income area, right? But it's a mega church. Like this is a church that we know the people, from a long time. And it was so hard for my husband and I to digest this at the time because it was Pastor Appreciation Weekend. And for Pastor Appreciation, the church bought Pastor a brand new Raptor, rolled it on the stage. And literally in the audience, there's people who can't afford groceries. And I know that they definitely would but to me, I was like, I don't know. I just can't justify, I can't justify that. He has a nice truck already. He doesn't need a, $150,000 truck. I don't know. So I definitely feel
I can see both though. That's the thing is I can put myself in the shoes of the person who can't buy groceries and this is grotesque. And then on the flip side, I'm like, this pastor has the weight of the world on his shoulders. If he were had a corporate job, it's not always true, but if he had a corporate job, what would his salary be if he were running an organization this size?
Sure.
And what if he could afford a Lamborghini or whatever, with this thing is said, he's taking a Raptor. I don't know if that's a weird justification.
Yeah, no, and I'm not even saying.
I'm just saying I can see both. And there is such a tension right now with that conversation.
And I'm not even saying if he afforded it and his family, I'm all for that. I think it was just more so because it was from people's it was the church's funds for tithing that was bought the truck. You know what I mean? So it's kind of
that makes it tougher somehow.
Yeah. So I'm I don't know. It wasn't
I'm big
I also want
my church that if we make mistakes, a printing job is bad, and it comes with ink is not right or something, I get more upset because that costs
some grandma brought part of her fixed income in to do
church.
that. Yeah.
So I kind of agree, but I'm also very conscious of and I'm grateful to be part of a team that's very conscious of every dollar that we spend is not ours. I mean, we tithe to the church as well, but that's somebody's, somebody chose to give that instead of going and buying something else. And so it puts a different level of another level of ownership on it. Man, this is somebody's mortgage payment that they're choosing to give here.
Yeah.
And rely on faith that they're going to be taken care of on the back end. So it puts a level of all right, we got to make sure we nail it the first time. And so also if that person is choosing to give that, they deserve the best experience in return. And so they're not the only people giving. There are a lot of people in there that, and most churches are this way, that there's usually people that don't have a ton of money, but most churches have somebody in there that's giving a ton of money and they can afford it. And a lot of these screens and stuff are being afforded by people that can afford it. But we also serve the lowest income here in Baltimore. And we gave out literally metric tons of food last year. And we report I think it's on every church to report that stuff at the end of the year. So you can say, hey man, we have all of this stuff. Our salaries are wide open, everything. Here's what we're paying staff. Here's what we're paying whatever. A gross total. We're not saying this is what we pay Luke, this is what we pay whatever. We just give a gross total and then we say, this is what we gave to the inner city of Baltimore last year, and this is what we did. And so because of that, I think each church needs that level of transparency, and it makes it when those moments that Ashley's talking about happen, it makes it a lot more palatable because okay, that is a lavish gift, but I am 100% in the camp that Josh said. If this pastor was pastoring a company this large, he would also be compensated that well. But I doubt the company would bring that onto the boardroom floor. They wouldn't drive a Raptor onto the boardroom floor.
That's still a little garish presentation.
I think transparency to the church, but also expressing it to your staff that, hey, we need to nail this the first time because this is not our money. This is somebody's money.
It's that sobriety that you're talking about, or that responsibility, the weight of I can hear a justification for spending a large amount of money on a thing, regardless if that's to dig wells in Africa or hey, the AC unit's out and it costs more money than I've ever thought about an AC unit costing or whatever. You can argue all those things are luxuries. But it's more of just how seriously are you taking it? And I've kind of played both sides here a little bit, but I also want to definitely.
Well, you can honestly see both sides.
Well, I want to say there are hardcore people who are abusive in church world, and they are hiding behind a 501c3, and they are doing things that are disgusting, and we all should be mad at that. In church, out of church, whoever, not okay. But I do think it is really easy also to say you shouldn't have any nice things. You should live in a monastery, and anything above that is unacceptable and blasphemous. There's got to be some other
I think
spot
that's
in
what I
between
meant
there.
when I say it's
for
on
sure.
us to do our due diligence on these. I am 100% big on like checking it out before I say yes, because I'm of the mind that you can make money anywhere in a lot of different ways. So is it worth it to you and your conscience, Jef? Like if you're dealing with this and it seems like you have a very good moral compass, like, hey, is this pulling me in a direction that I'm not really attracted to? It's on us to do that due diligence, because probably a church that isn't super transparent is not going to reveal that to you on a call. So
I really appreciate you guys sharing that. I mean, Nat, if you want to share also, I was just curious your guys' thoughts. I hope I'm not coming off too judgmental.
No, this is great. This is exactly the hard-hitting topics we cover on Making a Mark.
Yeah. I mean, just one reason I was curious about it is because as I reflect on my own like client work, it's like I had this crisis of conscience that I just described with working for churches, but for some reason, like when I do work for secular clients, I'm like, I don't care about the budget, right? Like if I've never worked for Nike, but hypothetically, if Nike spends millions of dollars doing a Times Square ad or something like that, I wouldn't lose any sleep over that. But so part of me wonders, why that is, why churches should be held to a different standard in terms of stewardship, I guess.
I think.
Let me just.
I think healthy
is
churches
super
are.
interesting.
I think they definitely are.
I feel like both Josh and Luke, I think y'all mentioned some of that. What I feel that like tension of like in order to be in a healthy spot. Again, I'm talking from like a church perspective, not just a designer. Like we've seen historically of people not being paid within the church, and like pastors like barely making it. And I have family also been pastors for many years, and like had them see the struggle because they were not compensated like other businesses have been. But also there now in recent and more bigger churches, there's the lavish, the extravagant, that I'm like, I don't feel ethically okay with the way they're spending the money, because like you said, like some people don't have much and they're giving as much as they can. So I feel like there is a responsibility, because it's people giving, especially some who don't have much. And I don't like when it's like expenditure just to spend. Let's just do for funsies. And there's that like, let's find that middle ground where like, yes, we're compensating people, like they deserve, but also let's be cautious with what we spend or like how we charge it. Like, and so I feel like that middle ground is what we need to be, but obviously it's really hard to find, because businesses are just, sometimes they're just spending left and right, and but the income I think is different, or like the heart, for me at least, is.
But I mean, I've even been a part of. So there was, some of you are familiar with the backstory with stuff with Vive. Thinking back to about this time last year when I was still drinking the Kool-Aid, and to give you guys some context, Vive was a church agency that was this time last year hiring like a lot of church designers. And I was brought in and offered an amount of money that was about double the paycheck I was receiving before. And the numbers, the types of parties they were planning, the trips, the expenses, all the stuff was just like nuts. And like, if, the stuff I was being told was true, and there are agencies that operate this way, but even so, I was like, wow, this feels weird that I'm getting to go to this trip and do these things when there are employees of this organization that are paid hourly and like might be in undeveloped countries. And yet I am having a dinner that costs more than my, first car. Like that's all business context. And I'm looking at, the clients were churches. So there's an element of like the trickle down tithe coming to pay for that dinner. And I was like, ugh. So I think I feel a little bit of that, like do more with what you have, regardless of the status of your 501c3 organization. Like, I don't know. I think there's a time and a place to spend, but sometimes I don't know. I just get like an icky factor. I think maybe that's the Holy Spirit or your conscience or moral compass or whatever label you want to give it. I think that kind of helps guide some of those in between times, because I've also taken my wife to nice dinners and felt great about that choice, you know?
Well, I've also been mentoring some people this year that feel guilty about charging churches X amount of dollars, and clients, not church related, but I have to say, let's say you get paid $30. You have to trust within yourself that what you got paid $30, they're going to make 60. And a good church would only spend $30 if it's going to make $60 worth of investment to the people as well. Like a good, like I'm equating dollars to like spiritual investment, obviously. But like if they're only going to buy, a good church, a healthy church is only going to buy this thing if they feel like it's needed and it's going to reach these people in their community. And a lot of these mega churches are buying it because the people coming there are expecting these things. I've had a peek behind the curtain on a lot of these places, and some of them are a lot of them are a lot.
Now you're jumping into consumer behavior in church, which is a whole different bag of cats.
There's an aspect of that we've become a consumer reality now. And the message, I'm not foolish enough to think that the delivery of the message shouldn't change with the times. The message remains the same, but the delivery methods have to change. And all of that comes with a cost. And the excellence expectation of people nowadays is a lot higher than it was 10 years ago, just because a lot of people can stay home and experience things that they've never experienced before on their phones. So why shouldn't church bring such an amazing experience? But going back to what I was saying, like if you're charging X amount of dollars, you have to trust that client is going to make double that. And so my church in particular, I know we only spend it if it's going to be worth the investment to the people as well. And so
that's good.
That's just
it's kind of hard to prove ROI for souls versus making sales, but yeah, I got you. Another kind of, like we have kind of like this broad spectrum, and then like I know when this feels icky and I know when it feels great, and I get to experience some of that on phone calls with clients, because like I'm getting a seat doing brand work. I'm getting to sit down at like the family dinner table with leadership and hear the heart of the church. And I got to be honest, some conversations, like I leave feeling kind of gross, and sometimes I will like figure out a way to get out of that project. And then other times I'm like, yes, this, like I can't like put a metric on it, but this is what we're supposed to be doing. And most recently there was a church up in Washington that they've got a nice facility, or like decent, like they've got a solid deal going on, but they made the choice to keep these orange uncomfortable chairs. Like they bought them because they were the cheapest, because it was an ugly color. And so they had these orange chairs in their auditorium for a decade, and they're finally getting rid of them because they're getting worn out. It's time to replace them. But the pastor went in front of everybody and said, hey, we're keeping these chairs, and they feel uncomfortable to sit in because we're supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable in order to be able to reach and help and do more. And I was like, shoot, that's the thing right there. Like they're not intense in squalor. They don't have like shaved heads and like some kind of weird approach to life, or like I shouldn't say weird, extreme approach to budgets, finances, any of that. It was just a sober, healthy, like what if we pump the brakes? What if we didn't spend it on that kind of thing? And so like, and they had a fire come through, they opened up their church and like had people like stay in the church, which is, like what I think those are the stories that people are wanting to hear and see when they're scrolling through TikTok, like I was last night, and see somebody doing sound check for their Christmas production, and they got the drummers flying through the air, zooming through the air. Did you see that, Joe?
Yeah, I was thinking about the flying drummer boy right when I was asking that question. For sure.
Utterly hilarious. And if you guys want to, I don't know if anybody needs more controversy and inflamed social media comment threads in their life, but just scroll through that dude's stuff, because he doesn't go to that church. The guy that posted the video doesn't go to the church, is not mad at the church, was literally just like, this is a hilarious optic. And then you've got the teams just duking it out in the comments, and then they're coming after him in his other videos. And you're like, bro, like I never condoned or attacked anything I talked about in the video. And you're over here like slamming, like he's literally posting like a video of a rainbow in a parking lot. And he's like, oh, I thought y'all hated rainbows. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's just people get angry in a hurry. Everybody's ready to be mad at something. And I think a lot of times the answer is both and it's not so much one side is completely wrong or the other. And if everybody just had a little bit more grace, I think we'd be in a better spot. If everybody could just be guests on episodes of Making a Mark, we just get all however many 7 billion people in the world to get on a Making a Mark episode. We'd all get along. It'd be great.
Yeah.
You guys should get the people who work for that church that did the flying drummer guy. That would be fascinating to hear their perspective. They wouldn't be on the production team, but I'm sure they have an in-house graphic designer, right?
Yeah.
That'd
be cool.
That's some real pain. Putting some pain up on the screen, pulling an Oprah over here, getting like,
Can I say that when I
just went through something devastating. Come on stage with us.
Can I say that I can kind of relate to the flying drummer boy? Because when I was in high school, at church, I was a flying angel, and it was the same kind of thing. I was on a track. So it was for our Christmas production. I was on a track and I would like fly forward and I had like my wings or whatever. And the funniest part about it is it was like a crank. So they would crank you out, and my cranker was actually my dad. And for whatever reason, like during the show, the crank got stuck.
Of course.
I flew back like super fast and I hit the wall so hard. And it was terrible, but it was a funny story. So I can kind of relate to the drummer boy. It's fun. I mean, it's cool.
Right, so
it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. Yeah.
I'm of the mind that it's impossible to pulley system someone effectively, because all I ever see or hear about is it going badly like that.
The Spider-Man Turn Out the Dark, the Broadway show. I think someone actually died on that production.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Because it was a whole thing of like a Broadway show that was trying to create like the web slinging that you see in the movies on live, just via pulley system and stuff. And yeah, it was a very infamous.
Heard about that.
Oh yeah, you should look into it. You can watch like a whole documentary on YouTube. It was a very infamous.
I've got enough pain and sadness in my,
my
production feeds right now.
That's funny. Oh man!
Sorry, these awkward pauses, guys, for the podcast. Y'all need to go back and check out the chats, because every time there's a lull in conversation, I'm reading. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but I'm reading, catching back up on.
We're just waiting for you. That's what we're doing. We're just sitting here.
Oh, Josh, stop talking. What's going on?
What do we do?
What happens next? Josh, shut up. Guys, this has been a blast. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. Every episode I love like a child, because one of my children, because it's different and unique, and I love it in different ways. And this one has been utterly delightful. We're gonna keep things rolling with our. So far, we started last week. I think this might be the second week, but we're gonna do an all draw. We're gonna make a mark together. Ho-ho. We are going to everybody get your pads and papers out, guys. If you're in the chat and you want to join along with us, y'all can actually DM your artworks to me on Instagram, or send them to the Making a Mark Instagram, and we'll include your doodles in the show as well. So basically what's happening is we've all got a prompt, and I think that prompt should be the business devil. So we'll have a devil, and he'll have whatever that means to you. I'm not gonna prescribe it for you. We're gonna set a timer. We're gonna do 60 seconds. And
oh man,
Erie, you want more time? Ashley, what's an appropriate?
No, that's a good amount of time. But I'm just thinking, I'm like, okay, I have to make it a little more simple than I was thinking.
Oh, for sure, simpler than you were thinking. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
So you said like the devil of business. Is that what you said? The business.
Yeah,
of
the devil's business is the name of the show, and so you're doing a doodle of whatever icon you would make for that, or like doodle, and draw fat, because it's going to be like scaled down. Okay. It's the devil's business, or business with the devil, or just draw a Satan. Colin in the chat is asking what the prompt is. Doing the devil's
Are
business.
We starting now? Do we already start?
Go ahead and get a head start. I haven't started the timer yet.
Oh.
I'm gonna follow the rules like a good boy though, and actually only start after the timer, but y'all do whatever you want.
I think we're all going.
I'm not going yet. Again, this is the most riveting part of the show for the podcast audience, where we all quietly draw for a few minutes. But if you are listening to the podcast and you want to join along, feel free to mail in your comments to or send us your little dudes. This is looking a lot more like a cow than a devil. I'm going to draw him with crazy eyes. That's what he's saying. God, this is truly terrifying. You know what we need right now? I just realized the missing element for this segment of the show is music.
Music.
That is what would do the ticket for us here. Te gusta. He's looking like a proper businessman. All right, guys, pencils down. Turn in your paperwork. The show is over.
You wait, flip it. Are we gonna each go through and show it, or everybody?
Yeah. No, everybody here. I mean, we can. I'll minimize my guy. You can see. It just looks like a.
It looks like a Monsters Inc. guy.
He does look more like that. All right, yeah. Show us your screens, or hold up your pads. I want to see all the.
So I didn't
get to finish
business side. I only did the devil with one arm. I didn't equate for time.
That makes the secret sauce. Jef, move yours to your right a little bit. Yeah, okay. He's holding the pitchfork. Cool. Super nice.
Funny.
He looks like what's that show on Loudmouth on Netflix? He looks like that style, like the big lips and stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to go for like Cow and Chicken, how the devil has the bulbous butt cheeks on that. Luke's, yours is so iconic, total logo worthy.
And I love
Luke and Nat both went for a iconic logo.
Nat. Very nice calls, guys. Is that a Satan gargle? Yes, Josh, it is. And Josh, you better send in yours for real. If y'all message me or message us on making a mark pod on Instagram, we will and do it in a timely manner. We will include your doodles in the YouTube cover artwork for today's stuff. Guys, this has been a blast. Again, thank you so much for joining us. It's going to be a wrap for today. Huge shout out to our guests for the episode. We'll have links for everybody down in the show notes. But tune in live with us weekly, Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. If you can't find the episode, you can YouTube search Bright Coal, or I think we're starting to show up for Making a Mark, but maybe not yet because we just renamed. And if you haven't already, follow us along at Instagram at Making a Mark Pod if you don't want to miss any details along the way. Like, share, subscribe, and share a link to this episode with a friend. Until next time, peoples, adios.
Bye. Thanks, guys.